Welcome back to Watching the Throne on the Late Night Chat Network. All right, welcome back, everybody. And of course, if you've tuned into the show before, you know me and JT over here, of course. But today, very happy to announce our first guest to the show, actually. Christina, aka Jamie's other hand over here, of course, Game of Thrones super fan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, no, as we're happy to have you as well, and I think this won't be the last time you guys see Christina here on the show. Hopefully, she's actually in the midst of another rewatch after just seeing it, I believe, very recently, if I'm not mistaken, right? And
Yeah.
You're actually going to be joining us for the next episode as well. So yeah, so it'll be a lot of fun. Christina is actually no stranger to coming on Late Night Chat Network to discuss Game of Thrones, by the way. She's actually the first time she came on Late Night Chat as a guest was way back in like, I don't know, episode maybe 20 something, I would say around the 20s, before it was just an audio podcast, before we did the YouTube video thing. And you actually came on to discuss the finale of Game of Thrones at that time, which JT wasn't watching at that moment in time. Like he had no context to the conversation at that time. Me and Christina's kind of talked about it because you had a lot of feelings on the finale, as a lot of fans did at that time. And you said you recently rewatched the whole series, and you feel like you have different opinions on the ending. Like,
yeah,
for Jay, obviously. Like, yeah,
go
ahead.
I don't know. Without spoiling anything, but I mean, like, yeah, I don't know where that one, he did have some heavy duty things you didn't. I don't know if you didn't like or didn't agree with, but you were voicing your opinion that first time.
I think I'm gonna have to go back and like rewatch that like podcast episode because, yeah, like watching it again.
Listen. Yeah, you can listen to
it.
and
listen to it. Yeah, because the last time, well, like just watching it again now, I think it's like my 5th time rewatching it in its entirety. And I think it's maybe because I watched it solid, like straight. There was no breaks. There was no, in between season timeouts or anything. Like, and even the weekly episodes, like, because a lot happens and a lot of feelings build up in between episodes. And there was a lot of expectation when it first came out, but
yeah, and then I also know with the fact that they split up those last 2 seasons and with the length of waiting, and like you said, you're only getting half the amount of episodes that we were used to, and then they kind of just kicked everything into high gear, from what I recall, of like, like we were used to the storytelling of it would take a season to maybe like go to a certain destination for the characters and stuff like that. Whereas in this one, it was like, boom, okay, hey, we're getting on this boat to go somewhere. 5 minutes later, they're there. And they were kind of like not really taking the time to, because they had so much to cover in that last season, right? Especially, they weren't really taking the time to kind of develop like some of the stories that we were kind of used to seeing. At least that's my opinion on it, but I've never revisited it since the first time. This will be my second time rewatching the show. This is only my second time. Hence why I said, guys, Christina's really the super fan here today. So she's going to actually have to be the Meister Stats of the crew here, I think, and make sure that we're correct on what we're saying here today in the coverage.
It's just a great show. Like, it's just, one of those, you just put it on, it's comfortable. Like, just great.
I was gonna say,
great show.
Watching it 5 times, I mean, there's got to be something else on television to watch. I mean, I like the Game of Thrones, but I don't know if I could watch it 5 times over.
But it's like how many times have you watched Friends or The Office or
but I mean,
something
that's
else,
on in the background. That's on in the background.
I know tons of people who have it on in the background. Like,
I know.
You know, It's a great
like a
show to also
background
fall
show. I don't
asleep
know about
to.
this.
I don't disagree with you.
This probably.
JT is actually not like normal folks, I feel like, in that regard, because he's actually always seeking out something new to rewatch. And I totally get what you're saying about having, you know, The Office or any of those type of things on in the background, because like it's almost like comfort food, revisiting series you kind of like, and that just to have on like and rewatch them. And I've done that many times with other shows, right? And this is actually one I never had rewatched before, so that's why when Jay literally got into Game of Thrones from watching the new series House of the Dragon, and never had seen Game of Thrones, missed out on that whole kind of like phenomenon, like of like how big of a show I think it was culturally at that time, right? And so that's why we kind of came up with this idea to go back and rewatch it, because I was like, you know what, I haven't really rewatched it at all either, so it'd be a good opportunity to revisit this stuff. And I've been enjoying it a lot, and like I'm glad to hear you still really enjoy the show and were able to join us for this one. And yeah, no, I mean, Jay's been really enjoying it. Now, very quickly though, before we get into this episode that we're here to discuss today, I did want to ask you. And by the way, guys, Christina actually, she actually recorded that episode twice. I should mention that she's one of the only people the only person we've ever lost an audio episode to, and that's totally on me. That's
why I forgot that.
Christina was so nice. She actually came back and re-recorded the episode and had to give us her thoughts again on the show, like because we lost the audio file somehow to that episode. So thank you for that.
No problem. Anytime. I think also, like a little side note, I think the last time that we discussed Game of Thrones too, the last time I was on, the Leafs were also in the playoffs, but it was a very different turnout.
It was a very short, very short. You know.
So it's interesting, you know, we're here, we're back.
Yeah, exactly. And now we're actually, you know, the second round, which, you know, we're all really excited for, except for Jay, because he's not a Leafs fan, of course. Bastard.
He doesn't count.
Yeah. But
in this combo, sorry, Jay.
No, not only that, though, Christina has been an OG in the podcast game. She was originally on our original podcast.
It's going to embarrass you now.
Yeah, Real Talks with Neeks and P back in the day, which is kind of like, you know, the first go at doing this podcast thing prior to, you know, Late Night Chat Network stuff, right? And not that it matters. I guess I should also mention you are our co-host on Late Night Chat Network's wife as well. I mean, but more importantly, you're our friend. You were on the show first. I just want to point that out.
Right.
We knew you longer. I knew you longer.
Right.
I tell them that
Jay's
all the time.
known me since diapers. Like, you know, it's
yeah, exactly.
The connections run deep here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Remind Lewis that, okay?
Yeah, I will.
I get you in the divorce.
Yeah. Believe me, we do. I'm well aware of that. But yeah, very quickly, what are your thoughts? Because we haven't really talked on it, I think, at all. On House of the Dragon, did you enjoy the first season of House of the Dragon? That being said,
so it's funny that you say that because I'm actually rewatching that too.
Yeah,
at a much slower pace and like, you know, not as so yes, I do enjoy it. I obviously love this whole world. I love this genre. I love it all. I did find that unlike Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, like super speeds through their timelines.
Yes.
15 years at a time.
So Jay, I don't know, man, how you started with House of the Dragon, because as like
well, there was big dragons, man. They were cool.
No, I know, but just the amount of names and characters and everything that they introduced at such like hyper speed, I still like watching it for the second time. I'm like, who's that? What's that person's name? Like, I'm just getting used to all the Harrises, like, you know, all the names. Like, so I mean, yeah, it's great, but I don't know where they're going, you know, with it. I don't know what they're going to do with it. I don't know where they're going to end. I don't know.
It's weird. Now that I've seen the beginning to this, I don't know the end of this, obviously. So I don't know what the end of Game of Thrones is going to bring yet for me. So
yeah, I was going to say
it starts in the beginning, right?
Yeah, it is before. So, it's before Game of Thrones, but like,
so it might be the right way to watch it, to be honest with you.
Well, you know, like Christina said, though, there is a lot of like characters that, like, I mean, and it's the same way when you start Game of Thrones for that matter. And as we just were previously talking before recording the episode here, still to this day, even though like some of the characters, their faces, I don't remember everyone's name rewatching it, at least for me, like even the second go around. And I don't feel like they do a proper way of introducing a lot of these characters along the way. You really got to kind of like, and then if you go on the internet, there's whole wikis devoted to their family trees and their timelines and things in the books that don't show up on the show. And you can really go fall down the rabbit hole in that sense by, it's such a rich kind of like lived in world that he developed through this series and is yet to finish actually in the books as well, which I know a lot of fans of the books are pissed about. Have you ever read the novels? No, neither have I.
No,
but,
like it's on my to-do list, but like obviously watching a show is like so much
A lot
faster
easier.
and
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I'd love to read the books one day, but no, I haven't. And I'm kind of glad maybe I haven't, because then I don't have that, like it was already emotional enough
Yes.
watching it without knowing the context from the story.
Right.
But I couldn't imagine like being a super fan of the books and then watching it and then being just like doubly
Not only that, I feel like,
disappointed. I don't know.
yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, not only that, I feel like when you read the source material a lot of the times and then they do adapt it into something like this, you're constantly comparing the two, and then it kind
Yeah.
of away from one of the, you know what I mean? Like for me, like there's so many things now they've adapted from comic books, which I read a lot of, and like whenever like 9 times out of 10, the movie or the TV show that's based off of the source material, it never lives up to how good the actual book is. So like, I mean, if this is something you really love, then maybe that's enough for you. Don't have to necessarily run to go read the books, right? Like
Yeah.
I think there's something to that as well. But I do notice like there's some differences when you look online between like some of the characters that were minor characters in the book became huge characters on the show, like from like what I've seen online about stuff, right? Also, I was just reading recently online that they said that they probably will be doing up to a 3rd season of House of the Dragon. I think they recently were talking about it. And the rumors are flying around once again of these other shows that they're looking to develop. What's his name? Kit Harington or whatever was recently, and George R.R. Martin were talking about that Snow show. I don't know if you heard about that. Like the
Yeah.
rumor,
But I
there's
thought it
doing a show of Jon Snow specifically, right? So
yeah, I thought they were okay, we can't talk about this with Jay, but
that's
I thought they were, I thought they were slated to start that in January.
I don't know if
Like
that's
There's all
I don't know if that's official.
okay,
I think
okay.
there's talk of it. Like there was somebody that tried to dispel the rumors, but like I think George R.R. Martin went out of his way to be like, no, that's something that's gonna happen. It just takes a while for them to,
Of course, yeah.
right? And they already have another hit on their hands with House of the Dragon. So I think they're just kind of just trying to slow roll this stuff out and space it out possibly. But there's not only that one, there's like 2 other ones too. Like Hedge Knight apparently is supposed to be one, and like there's like apparently like 3 other shows they wanted to do. But I think the Jon Snow show is the one that's closest to actually becoming a reality past this House of the Dragon show, from what I understand. So
Yeah.
yeah, so maybe that's coming soon, because it's one of those things that the actor who played Jon Snow, I think recently had mentioned it, but like then he was trying to back away from the comments and say, oh yeah, no, maybe, we'll see. Like, I guess because he isn't allowed to discuss it, maybe, right?
Well, yeah, and then I mean, like for them, it's like I wouldn't want to say anything, because then you're gonna have people just like hounding you and following you. Like,
right.
where is he going? What is he doing? Where is he filming? Like,
why
so
is he dressed up like that?
yeah, but they can hide it because they film a lot of this obviously remotely, like or like very remote places, like you've seen so far. But it's like just the fact, like, oh, why is he getting on a plane? Like, where is he going? Like it's just I can understand why they would be like,
Over
no.
vacation in Norway. That's where he's going.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. You're gonna start analyzing his every move. That's what happens with these guys, right? Like
Yeah.
that's why a lot of these
Well,
studios
I mean,
make them sign like a cease and desist when they do some of these projects, like with the Marvel stuff too, because they can't say that they're in these movies until it's revealed in theaters a lot of the time, right? Because then they're like theories online start going crazy, right? I mean, Jon Snow actually has been cast as somebody, the Black Knight in the Marvel movies as well, which he was just like shown or mentioned at the end of another film, Jay, not too long ago, and they haven't touched on it since. So, and it's funny that they would actually make him play a character, which is again somebody is kind of like a knight character as well, like an English Knight character in the Black Knight, which for Marvel, which is kind of interesting as well. But of course, Jay doesn't know the future of Jon Snow, so we'll
you don't
that to ourselves for this.
Well, I mean, if my brother gave it away at any point, then I'm fucked. I already know. But I mean, I might as well just go with it.
Jesse told JT that Jon Snow dies. So
I don't believe anything about this fucking show anymore because every episode they lie to me and shit. So I'm tired of that.
So hard not to mention what we're talking about here. All right, Jay.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys do it, man. Like it's season 2.
Already said she's gonna watch her tongue on the episode, so let's keep. I'll try to keep her in check too in that sense. So
if you see her going in that way, just mute her mic quick.
I know I'm very aware. So like if I'm acting a little funky, it's because like I'm really focusing on not saying anything.
Right.
Yeah, you gotta focus.
Like,
Otherwise,
really
it just
focusing on
rambles,
it.
right?
Right. So anyway,
I do the same.
With that all being said, let's get into it. And Christina's going to keep us in check to make sure that Meister Stats here doesn't mess up in terms of the stuff here. So today we're talking about Game of Thrones season 3, episode 2. Sorry, 3. I should change that. My bad. Walk of Punishment. Update that for you guys there. There we go. Already screwing up. Okay, so
my fault.
Blame it on me. Nervous to have you on the show.
It's my fault.
I know. So okay, so yeah, season 3, episode 3, Walk of Punishment. As always, guys, make sure you're subscribed and hit the like button for these episodes. And let us know if you like Christina on here. She's going to be coming on many more episodes, I believe, and I hope so, if she enjoys herself here today.
Let's try to get this international again, Neeks.
There you go. So it opens up with a down shot of the water and Robb sending his grandfather, Lord Hoster Tully, if I'm not mistaken, out to sea for his funeral proceedings, and then it's the whole, shoot a flaming arrow at him as they get cast out to sea type of move, that warrior's death or whatever, a funeral type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which buddy there steps up. I forgot his name.
Edmure.
Thank you. He fucks up and tries to shoot the flaming arrow at the boat and fails repeatedly 3 times, misses the boat. And then we got Brynden Tully, who's Catelyn's uncle. Is that correct? I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yeah. The Blackfish.
Right. So he steps up and he kind of pushes them out of the way and then shoots an arrow and turns his back without even looking. And it kind of goes and
that
fire. Right?
That was a badass move.
Right,
that was pretty badass.
Get the fuck out of here, man! Let me do that. And it's so far at that point. It's the other way, right? And
it's almost around the river bend. It's
what an opening scene, though, right? That was a pretty funny scene. I think to open up with just how frustrated he was with this guy. What's his name again? Sorry, I forgot his name.
Edmure.
Edmure, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's Catelyn's brother.
Okay, so it's like a whole family affair there.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, good first scene. I thought to open it up. Actually, sorry, I'm all over the place. What we normally do at the start of this show, also, Christina, is just say overall, like, what your thoughts were of the episode before we get into it. If you wanted to give, did you like this episode? I know you kind of just pick the next 2 that we were going to do when we recently spoke.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought these were really good episodes that we kind of, you got to kind of take part in here today. This is a really good one, I thought. What did you think overall of this?
Yeah, I think, I think this episode before, this is just a really good storytelling episode, and it really builds the story, and it really kind of foreshadows some of the character traits, and it just kind of solidifies how everyone's feeling or the way things are going, and yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, maybe it's not my favorite, or it's not a fan favorite, but it has its moments for sure.
Yeah, I'll just say it's very apparent how much this show got much better even with the 3rd season. And I know we recently talked about this as well. Like the 2nd season, maybe not as great as the 1st season, and it had to set up a lot and establish a new direction for all of these characters after all the Starks got split up at the end of that 1st season and everything else that occurred. But yeah, I think that was with this 3rd season. I think it like from here on in, it's just kind of like. This is where it gets really, really, really good, the show moving forward, and the reason it has so many fans for that. That being said, because I know a lot of people fell off the first season and maybe didn't revisit it until later on in the series. I didn't start watching it, I think, until the second season, and I had to go back and watch the first season. Even me, it almost lost me with how many characters there were at the start of the show, right? So I kind of had to really stick with it because I was told it was worth it, right? And Jay, what do you think about this episode?
Yeah, there was a lot to take in. There's like you said, I felt that there was stuff that like you said, innuendos at certain parts and certain scenes where they made you think, like, what the fuck is coming up next? Like, there's either two ways this can go, right? So it I some characters that I hadn't seen yet. So I'm pretty sure there was a couple, and there was one or two that were in there that I hadn't seen before, if I'm not mistaken. But I had to actually look up their names. If I'm not mistaken, it was either this episode or the following episode. But yeah. But it feels like it's laying some different type of groundwork for some interesting stuff. And I always like how the beginning. I just want to say that, but I feel like the beginning credits is changing every time I watch it. Am I right?
Okay. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I do have a note, especially for the 4th episode. You'll see, like,
man, they
people skip the intro, but it's like you got to watch the intro because it kind of lays the groundwork lays the story for what's happening currently
about different new regions that are opening up during the actual start that actually relate to the events of the episode. Exactly. Yeah.
So it wasn't me just being stoned or anything. It really is changing. Okay. Because I used to skip through it too, right? And then I was like, maybe not. Let's see something one time.
Okay, so then the next scene here, he speaks to his nephew, Rob. That's his nephew, as Christina just mentioned, who he doesn't refer to as king during this moment, and which is Brynden Tully's quick to kind of point out to him, and he's talking about one of his lieutenants at a stone mill, and he talks about he gets threatened and told about his failures, about capturing the mountain. I guess he sent him out to capture the mountain at some point.
Yeah, because Rob's trying to reduce the Lannister army so that he can advance and keep taking over lands and territories. And like he says in the scene, he's like, I wanted to fish them out, but you disobeyed the order and went after them. And like, you lost men, like 208 men. And what did we get? A stone mill. Like, it's so disrespectful. Like, Edmure is like...
Right. Yeah. He's just like, and again, like we already know, like Brynden already kind of like you can tell he doesn't like him and thinks he's an idiot, like already with that opening scene. And he can tell that he's just growing ever more frustrated in this situation. And Rob, at this point in time, as the episodes go on here, you can see like he's kind of, he's flailing in the wind a little bit now. He's not losing the war. He's been trying to strategically do these attacks on him, like you said, trying to like bring him out, try to get him in certain areas, like so they can dwindle down their armies. But it's not really, not being very successful at this moment in time. And I know the funeral and the wife and everything, he was already judged on that distracting him and everything going on as of recently in his life. Right?
Wives are distracting.
I mean, listen.
Amen. No, I don't know, but amen.
Called out for that last episode.
I know. I watched and I heard you guys talking about it, but it's true. Like, and you can see it in this episode a lot that he's really struggling to like, keep people like faithful to him, or like keep people like he's the king like of the North. They've named him that, and he's not honored the respect of that.
Yep. Yeah.
He's getting angry. I noticed that. You notice he's getting a little bit more pissed off with his people now that are supposed to be backing him.
In any empire, though, you have people that are judgmental of your, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's always going to be people, there's going to be, sometimes uprisings. There's going to be people that are not really pleased with the direction of how things are going, right? And I think that now they're very much more so vocalizing it, some of his men, right? And then they mentioned that they took hostages Willem Lannister and Martin Lannister, who they mentioned are 14 and 15-year-olds. And he basically reminds them, what they've done to him. And and this stakes, as you mentioned, about 208 men lost in order to get those children. And he's kind of like, really, like, this is like, what are we doing out here, right? Like, he's like, we're losing the war to Tywin here. That's what we're doing, right?
Yeah,
So,
and it's like, oh, just because they're Lannisters doesn't mean they're like, valuable
Unstoppable.
Lannisters. Like we're talking, the children of Ned Stark versus what did he say? Like the uncles, nephews,
yeah,
sons, brothers or something. Like
right.
Yeah.
oh, grandfathers, like second grandsons or something like that. It's like really like
Yeah, there's enough Lannisters to go around with no positions of power, like, you know what I mean? And now you're stealing children, like, so
yeah,
they keep trying to do that to one another, like, oh, well, I got this one, we got your daughter, you know what I mean? They just keep going back and forth and stealing each other's family at this point, right? Try to use them as bartering, chips, basically, to cash in and be like, all right, well, so
Well, it is kind of, bro. I got your pawn, if you know, and then you got my knight or whatever. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So it's like a chess game. It really is.
Yeah. Tywin then meets with his inner council there now, which is, consisting of Lord Baelish, of course, Lord Varys, Maester Pycelle, and Tyrion and Cersei there, who's sitting beside her father there. And this scene is hilarious, with Tyrion coming in and moving the chair and making all that noise, and of course setting himself up right across from Tywin, who he's obviously, really pissed at his father about everything that has occurred up to this point, like his acknowledgement that he hasn't got, like, and everything else, right, that has happened with this whole arrangement. And again, I just like, he's like, oh, I love what you've done with the place. He's like, yeah.
It's so intimate. What a lovely table.
As I mentioned before, Tyrion is my favorite character, and he was previous to this rewatch, and he still is. I think that he just has such great lines and great scenes, and I think that's why he's one of the only characters you see every episode, like, and he's won awards for his role on this show, like, right? And if I'm not mistaken,
It's just his mannerisms too, man. Like, you can just read him. He doesn't even really have to say anything without you knowing, right? Like, I mean, you can just know by his movements and stuff. It's kind of cool. It really is. He seems to be a really good actor, right?
Yeah, the character is just really well written too, so it's
And
like it's
yeah,
hard not to love Tyrion. Like,
yeah.
doesn't matter what situation he's in, it's just like it's hard not to love him.
well, that's the thing. I think it's just such a juicy role, because, like, whenever he has those scenes, like, and it's just barbs with one another, these characters are just being so nasty to one another, like,
They make it sound so nice, bro. With their accents and stuff, it does. It sounds so peaceful and charming, like,
right, if any.
Yeah.
But they're still assholes to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So Tywin then asks for updates on Jaime, to which they have none. Varys says Robb and his men currently are in River Run for his grandfather's funeral. Roose Bolton holds Harrenhal in his absence, which would make him Lord currently, if not in practice, if not by name. And what do we think of that? Any comments on that one? On that? No.
Well, I want to go back. When I said mannerisms, like I just remembered the way he dragged the chair. Like, okay, we know he's a little person. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's gonna be harder. And that chair probably back then weighs a fucking more than him, right? So it just looked like, fuck you guys. I don't need your help. I can pull it here to the head of the table here.
I love
his sister sits right beside daddy.
Right. I love the subtlety of Varys too. He's got like a smirk on his face.
Mhm.
Because like they're the only ones that are really kind of cool in this situation at this moment in time, like the people sitting at the table, because he kind of, he fucked over Maester Pycelle, and, like, I mean, the sister obviously doesn't like him, the father doesn't like him, we know that, right? And Baelish, like, so, like, you're just like, so it's just funny if you see him kind of do that, and, like, you could see, like, if you look, like, everyone's reaction, you can see, like, he's smirking slightly.
Yeah, Varys has a little smirk. I have that in my notes too. Yeah.
I thought that was really well done. But basically, yeah, Lord of Harrenhal would make him a worthy suitor of the widow Erin they mentioned in this scene. And then Lord Baelish, thanks Tywin for this, like, because he kind of lets him know, like, he can set him up over there if that's the case. And Baelish is very slowly making his way, to where he kind of wants to be in terms of You know what I mean? Like his place, let's say, amongst the royalty here, right?
Titles do seem to breed titles.
That's right.
Well,
Yes,
you know, I just see how I just like it's so interesting. How they just give you a wife. Here's your wife. We'll make that in a trade.
Well,
Like it's
right.
like better than money at one point, or you hope so at least.
Well, not only that, Jay, but I believe the widow Erin, as they're referring to, is the chick. It's the sister of Catelyn who's got the moon door situation, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, that's right. Remember, Jay, the one that's got was breastfeeding the grown.
Yeah, like how the fuck did they get up there?
So
I'm still waiting to figure that out.
But how do they get to the court? Like, how do they get to the throne room?
Where there's the hole fucking right down to the ground. Like how I didn't see the outside part of that place. All I see was a hole in the ground that goes right down to the it's
not only that though, we do know how she is related to Catelyn. We know how Baelish feels about her, right? So like I think that he's really worming his way into this family. Right, so I think this is obviously
refusing to be friend zoned.
Right.
Well,
this would basically in turn make Lord Baelish Lord of the Vale, they say in this scene, and they basically let him know. It says should leave for the Eyrie. I don't know, is it Eyrie?
The Eyrie, yeah, the Eyrie,
as soon as possible, and bring Lisa Erin into the fold essentially, and Tyrion then tries to put a stop to this arrangement by mentioning the fact that Baelish will be needed with Joffrey's wedding coming up, and that finances will be needed to be watched over, as it will be such an expensive affair. To his dismay, then his father's like, "Yes, I know this, and that is why I'm appointing you as Master of Coin," which he is not happy about. He's like, "Listen, I know how to spend money. I don't really know how to spend it. like my whole life."
Yeah. Same. Yes. I have the same energy. Like I got it. Yeah.
So
I totally felt him in that scene. Like, just the way he said, "Hey, I suck with money, man."
Well, yeah, he says, "Despite being rich, he's like, I have no money, no problem spending it. I have nothing about managing it." Right?
Yeah, shit.
Right, and the sister's got the shit-eating grin on her face, Cersei, because like everyone could tell that this is not something he wants, and obviously he's like, "Well, listen, I'm gonna give you this," because they just had that conversation where he was asking for more and recognition and everything else. So it seems like over these next few episodes, he tries to do things for him, but it's nothing to his liking, like nothing that Tyrion wants. They kind of just keep forcing things on him, right? And like he's just trying to like make do and kind of basically be up in the mix still so he can play the game, right? Like as he's been stating previous to this, like he just wants to be close to these people still and have some level of prominence so he can actually just make sure that they don't do better than him, or you know what I mean, like, or like he wants to the realm in that sense, right? So
I also thought it was going back to, like, I just actually thought about this, like, just the way that they were all sitting around that table too. Like, I know Tywin is hand of the king,
yes,
right? So where he was sitting is typically where the king would have sat, but where Cersei moved her chair is where typically the hand would have sat. So like just for her to have the audacity, like, to walk into that council, not really being a member, and just pull a chair to where the hand would sit,
right,
is like, it just gives you a little bit more about where her motives are going and where she's like,
yeah, there's a lot of she is. There's a lot of foreshadowing going on in some of these scenes. And not only that, like we all know that he's just a placeholder. Like he basically now Tywin is acting as the king, as kind of like Tyrion was prior to that, in a sort of a way, like making moves outside of Joffrey's kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, because he's not doing much. It's almost just like he's a placeholder, like he's king, but no one actually
just holds the name. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, or, and not only is he not actually king, as we know through Blood, because of that whole situation, right? There's that whole part of it as well, right? It's
wait, they're not?
Spoiler alert, guys. But yeah, so that's there's that part of it as well. But yeah, that's a good point. Actually, I didn't think of that, Christine. That's actually a really good point. That's
why he made like a point of pulling the chair like that too, eh? And just being that like right across from him. That's the whole reason, because of what you said there. I didn't think of it like that, but I didn't know that's where the right hand would sit and blah blah, like you were just saying there.
Well, because Tywin he doesn't know where his place is anymore, right? So we just kind of like, well, if she's going to do that, I'm going to do this.
Not only that, Joffrey isn't actually present in any of these meetings. They make all these decisions for him outside of his, like, you know what I mean? Like, rule, essentially, right?
What is he, like 16? Like, I don't know.
He's just
too busy,
wandering the streets. He's probably 12, you know?
No, he's too busy, like, polishing his crossbow.
That's what they're calling it now these days, Jay, in this show. He's polishing that old crossbow off. Yeah, there you go. No, and then Brienne, we cut over the scene with Brienne of Tarth and Jaime being brought in, tied up as prisoners of Roose Bolton. And as they argue with one another, Jaime mentions, that, you're probably going to be raped as a prisoner here and what to expect, and basically not to resist as they will kill her. And she basically asks him, would you do the same in my position? Like, how dare you, like, you know what I'm saying, to kind of like, just, take what's about to come, like, here, and which is terrible. Like, I know these are dark situations, but as we've seen on Game of Thrones, these are things that happen in these circumstances when these people get taken prisoner in some of these situations, right? I know that's not a great thing to subject to talk about it always, but like you could tell that Jaime does care, like, about her well-being, despite being led around by her this whole time, right? I would say,
yeah, you can start to see it for sure. You can start to see that he's like trying
bond form.
Yeah, like for sure. Like he definitely is starting to have a little bit of a soft spot for her, and he's trying to tell her, like, I'm trying to help you here. But, at the same time, like, so far she hasn't admitted to being anything. Like, she won't even refer to herself as a woman, like, or a lady, right? She doesn't like it when people say that, but she also doesn't want to be called a knight because she's not. So, she's kind of fighting that double stand. Yeah, she's fighting the double standard, and she's just trying to be who she is. But yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe she's one of your favorite characters. Am I correct in saying that? Because she is a great character, but I believe like in terms of like your top three, like is she there, or like, yeah, like or without maybe mentioning some characters, if it's somebody Jay hasn't been introduced to as of yet, if you had to give out a top three, where are you?
But putting me on the spot here, because like I don't know if I can. Like, I mean, there's obviously your classics. Yeah, like, yeah, I don't know, but I think like I respect her character for sure. Like, well, as a woman, like I also have like a soft spot for like strong women. So yeah, like you be a knight. Like,
collectively though, she was one of a lot of people's favorite character in this show. Like,
she's badass. Badass.
Me too. Like, I love the character as well. Like, I don't know if the top three, possibly, because sometimes I don't like to have these pieces of shit in my top three, but I love like evil fucks on these shows too. Like, as the time goes on, there's lots of great characters on this show. That being said, I mean, of course, everyone, Jay already knows, because that much information already came out, but buddy, there's Pedro Pascal is a fan favorite now, right? Which I forgot was even on the show, which we haven't seen him show up as of yet, but I think everyone loves that character as well, especially now everyone loves Pedro Pascal. It seems like everyone's now like talking about his character on Game of Thrones again, right? So like, I think that's a fan favorite as well, his character.
I think any of the characters that are just like so true to their character and so true to like their word, like you'll pick it up. You'll pick up what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Okay, so the Brotherhood without banners and Arya, we cut over to them again here, and Thoros speaks to Arya, says, she's their guest, not a prisoner, and they just recently found out that she's Arya Stark in the last episode because of the Hound, as we know, and that she's he mentions that she's better off staying with them, at this moment in time, and Hound is their prisoner still. And this is where we say a sad goodbye to Hot Pie. He says his goodbyes to Arya and says that, he's been asked to stay due to his bread making abilities. And he gives Arya direwolf bread. What'd you think of this scene? This is kind of a sweet, sad scene, eh? It was kind of like, he's been with the group this whole time. And the bread's a little weird looking, but
I was going to say, like, and she took a bite out of it. I thought it was a sponge at first when he handed it to her, like of some sort, like, or yeah, I didn't know. And then he starts talking, and it's bread, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, but yeah, no, I kind of You think? What do you think with the fucking hole? Like it looked like he just
He was
kept
trying to
just
make
needed.
the scales, like the Stark sigil, like they have the scales, like or the I don't want to say scales, but it's supposed to be like feathers, but you can't, or not feathers, like fur, but you can't like carve fur like into
Okay.
things, so it looks like scales. So that's what he was trying to
I,
trying to
I
do.
think he did a pretty good job with all
I
things
think he did
considered.
too,
Intricate
you know,
design, right? But
for this like 8th century baker. I
right.
think he did pretty well.
I like how she took a bite of it though, and she's like, "Oh, it's good." Like as they're like,
Yeah.
went away, right? So that,
But
yeah,
I think that moment actually was like, one of those like moments that like took you out of what the hell she's been going through, and it made you
yes,
like think, well, for me anyways, like she's still a kid.
yes,
Like she's a child. Like she's not like despite everything she's seen and everything she's gone through, she's still a kid.
absolutely, yeah, yeah.
So,
It was a nice kind of heartwarming moment, I think, between the two of them in that sense, right? And it's kind of nice to see that he felt safe finally, though, because like that kid was very scared out amongst all of them. He was
come on.
right? Like, which rightfully so. But I think it was nice that he actually seemed like he was okay where he was, where they left him, and he was gonna be all right, right? They kind of leave you with that at least, which we've seen a lot of tragic ends for characters up to this point. So at least they kind of left you feeling okay, this kid's gonna be all right.
He's gonna be fine.
Who knows? You're gonna see him hanging somewhere in another episode, dude. That's the problem. I
You
never
gotta
know
keep
with this
watching, Jay. You
episode,
don't know.
with this series. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
But hey, in this they
this
turn
game,
from
that hot
children.
pie becomes the king later on in the
I was
series.
gonna say,
Nico.
and it doesn't take long for the, like you said, for a kid for the next day. I mean, within a year they become a woman all of a sudden. So you can't give her that. She's living in a rough world. She can't be a kid. She's not allowed to.
Growing up quick. Then we got Brynden, Tully, and Catelyn speak to one another about all the craziness going on and how she misses her children and how Bran and Rickon might be dead. And then he tells her to stay strong for Robb in this time, like because Robb believes they're still alive. And little do they know they are still alive. We know that as the viewers, but of course, yeah, she's kind of really upset about this, and it's been so long since she's seen her children, right? She's kind of been separated from them for quite a while now. And then we have Robb's wife there, Talissa. She's there's a scene of her bandaging up Martin Lannister, I believe it is, who's her about whether or not the rumors of Robb turning into a wolf are true or not. With the rumors of the King of the North, how he turns into a wolf at the in the night and everything else, right? So,
who the fuck knows, man? I never see them in the same scene sometimes together, and it could be his dream. You don't know. I don't know, man. What the fuck's going on in this? I'm really. Especially these next few episodes, I think are going to be a little bit interesting.
The magic, we were talking about that when you had to jump off there for a second, Jamie, you were figuring things out with your setup about how the magic, how much more things are happening. Like every episode, you're discovering like a new thing, like a new magic aspect, of this world, basically, that we haven't actually seen up to this point, right? Like they're really doing a lot this season in terms of like all that kind of shit. Like you said, you start the season off with a giant, and now we're at everything else that we've discovered along the way, right? So who knows?
With the little people, then we got the giants. That's what happened.
Yeah.
That's the correction.
And then we cut over here to the wildlings again. We visit them. They happen upon a shitload of severed horse heads. They seem to be in a spiral formation. It looks.
Yeah, I got a picture of that, bro. That's pretty cool, man.
That up on screen. It is pretty cool. Yeah.
You can't,
Yeah, it was it was horse like parts. Like it wasn't just their heads. It was like all.
Yeah, it was everything.
Yeah, all the bodies and.
But they mentioned that there was 300 men there previously. Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And they make a comment about that. They're like, oh, they're always so creative or whatever, like with their designs, I guess things that they leave for them. And as we know, like this, looks like the work of the White Walkers, obviously. And they mentioned the fact that they are likely part of the Undead Army now.
Yeah.
And, Tormund is given orders to go to the wall with Jon Snow helping out, I guess to cut them off. Like they're trying to make their way over to the wall right now, the wildlings and Jon. And I guess that's kind of like their next course of action right now, because, like now that they actively know that this army is making their way closer to, the wall.
I think I
Yeah.
think
What?
he ordered Tormund and Jon Snow and whatever to go scale the
To
wall
take
at
20
Castle
men.
Black, um, because uh, Commander Mormont was supposed to be there with a bunch of the Night Rangers, and they weren't there, and I can't remember how, like, because I didn't watch the few
Right.
episodes before, but I think there was something, and then when he wasn't there, it was kind of like, well, now I'm not gonna.
Yeah, because
I don't. Yeah.
jumping ahead because I've already watched the next two episodes. I've watched episodes 5 and 6 and taken notes on it already, just kind of prepping for the coming weeks. And
Yeah.
yeah, you're not wrong in the sense like they kind of trying to figure out like who's all the outlook, all the posts. Like basically the night, like the wildlings are trying to figure out, like they're questioning John. This may have happened in one of the episodes we're talking about tonight, but they're questioning John about like basically the setup that they got going and where everybody is right at the wall,
Right.
and everything else. So
Yeah.
but I also thought they were trying to maybe I'm wrong in that sense. I thought they were also just trying to get ahead of this whole White Walker situation, the wildlings as well, right? Like, are they also trying to protect the interest of that? This is what I've always been confused about. Are they just really just trying to survive out there?
I think I think they know what's coming. Like they know what's coming more than like anybody else does. Um, but to be honest, like now my like thoughts have like totally left my mind because of I'm not gonna lie, like this kind of storyline I don't care about like whatsoever. Like it's not my favorite storyline of the whole show.
Thank you.
So
Jon Snow, this is how I felt the first time I watched it. Jon Snow's
yeah,
this wildling period, I've always felt was the most boring of the storylines happening at this moment in time. It's funny enough. Upon this
Well, they know the coolest things, bro.
No, but upon this rewatch, I don't think it's as bad, but I didn't like this the first time around at all. This whole wildling period that John's with the wildlings, I'm like through the sea. I was not like I always used to get disappointed when his scenes would come up watching an episode because I'm like, oh, there goes 10 minutes of this episode or whatever, right? Like when I watched the first time, I didn't like his whole time with the wildlings in that sense. Now I feel I'm enjoying it more because I kind of know, like, again, somewhere down the road where the direction of the show goes, but like,
yeah.
I don't love it still. Like, I agree with you there. Like, it's okay. But
I think it's like one of those storylines that it's like like for me anyways, like I can't remember it despite watching the show 5 times.
right,
Like I can't remember it. Like I'm sure if I watched the last few episodes, I would be able to tell you exactly what was happening, and
right. So
whoever comes on next can maybe correct me. I don't know,
no,
but
never.
yeah, yeah, I don't know. I just know that there was like, they're trying to like John is trying to like show like the Night's Watch or trying to bring the Night's Watch and the wildlings together to fight the army of the dead. And I think, he's trying, or Mance Radar is trying to figure out who he's loyal to. Like who is he going to fight with if it comes down to what? So I think it's like a lot of that, but I don't know. It has its moments, but overall I'm like you. I just skip. It's a pee break for me. Like I don't know.
Hey, you're enjoying it though. You're enjoying the wildling stuff so far.
Yeah, I find it interesting. There was I met a bunch of new things that are going on in there. I'd like to see what the fuck's on their side, right? In their little fucking village and town and all that stuff. What is it on that side of the wall?
Yeah.
Mm,
I just feel like they know more. They might have seen more than these
Well, they've
people.
lived out in the wild essentially.
Yeah,
Of course they know more. Yeah, no, for sure. Like
yeah. So
there's a lot that they can learn from one another is what basically you know what I mean? It obviously is
I
kind of
feel like they're helping each other that way in that sense, right?
John is the go-between right now. John is
Yeah.
the one that now has lived with, has been under, like, with on both sides of the wall. So he's, obviously going to become a valuable player in that sense of knowing both in and out of like kind of what's going on, right? So,
I mean, and really, as we've been told from the beginning, they're really just protecting themselves. That who people are on this side of the wall, right? I mean, they're just really
everyone's so ignorant as to what's going on. They just don't, like, you know what I mean? Like they think the Night's Watch is wasting their time. Half the people out there, right? They don't really know like what's going on, right? So.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Night's Watch, they approach Craster's Keep again for assistance after making it back from the wall and everything that went down with them, previously to this, and basically seeing the White Walkers, at least Sam did, and some of his other, fellow
He
knights.
had Ghost in the background. He hadn't seen him for a while either.
Who did?
No,
Sam.
when they were walking in, when
When they were
Sam was
walking,
walking in,
yeah,
he seen, he
Ghost was
noticed
there.
him.
Right. Ghost in the woods there. That's right. Yeah. And basically, they come back. They mention that they've lost a significant amount of men, or at least I guess Craster kind of notices that they're like less than like they were previously when they had come there. And, despite him being an asshole, he proceeds to let them stay there temporarily. And, in the background, you can hear
some crazy lines.
Hear a woman, giving birth in the background, and you find out, and we know what he does with the boy children already, sort of like that's been alluded to previously. And Sam, goes looking for the source of the noise and sees that it's Gilly, and who he finds is the person giving birth, and that she gives birth to a boy in this scene. So again, we know what happens to the boys of this Craster's Keep.
Well, we don't really know yet.
We don't, like, they kind of
You know where they're brought
so much, but we know that something happens when they get taken to the woods, right, Jay? I mean, like, we know that much. They know that they get rid of the boys that are born, right? So as
maybe they turn to Tarzan. Who knows?
I sacrifice. They turned to Tarzan.
They're raising them up to be like the kings of the jungle. I don't know, man. I'm waiting to see. Who knows with this show?
John saw, though. We know that he saw what was going on in the woods, and he's the one that warned him about that whole situation. And he was not a fan of this guy, right? Previous day.
No, he's a vile human being.
Yeah.
Like, he's
the fact that they keep
Some
having
little lines,
yeah, I know. It's so Theon's still locked up. He gets the bat.
Put my hashtag up.
Gets the bat taken off his head and freed by a person who said he would come back for him at night. And he ends up giving him a horse to ride away on and tells him to go east. There's so much here that we can't say, Jay, about this development of this, which I think you find out in the next episode, at least some of the stories, some more as well, as you know, I think. But this does not define anything about this situation, I think, in this episode.
Yeah, I figured that
out. Beginning of the greatest.
I know.
Storyline?
I can't, Jay. We can't really get into it.
But he hasn't done really much the whole time, like.
Just wait.
Whatever's happening here, like, I even forgot how this first developed, whatever's coming, and I am kind of amazed right now rewatching these just because I know where it goes, and I'm like, wow, like, I can't believe that, like this.
This is how it started.
Theon has an interesting journey for the rest of the series from here on out. Let's say
I was gonna say he's had probably the most boring and shitty kind of fucking, in a sense, right up till now. You know what I mean?
He's got a lot coming to him. Let's just say that. So let's just stay tuned.
Become a main character, right?
Yeah. Well, he is. He has been. He's been in every season so far. He's one of the main characters for sure. So. And then Stannis Baratheon gets pissed at Lady Melisandre, who is leaving him temporarily, and he expresses how pissed off he is and what he's owed, and says that he wants her and another son, and she assures him he will sit on the Iron Throne one day. The same type of stuff that, like, what, you like the delivery of my lines there? He wants her. He wants to overtake her again. I don't know.
No, this scene makes me laugh because the way she's looking at him, he's so desperate. He's like,
yes.
And she's ready to leave,
looking at her like, give me a son, I want you. And he's like whispering into her ear and just getting all close. And then she's like, nah, like, no. Your fire's burned too low. Your dig game is whack.
But that's the thing. Like, there's nothing new that she said to him here that she hasn't already told him. Like, he knows all that. Oh, you're gonna be on the Iron Throne. Don't worry, but I got matters to take care of. I'll be back. Don't worry, with your thirsty ass. Yeah, that is pretty much what goes on in this scene, because she says the same shit she's been saying to him this whole time. He's like, I need a son. And he's like, we gotta do this thing. And he's like, and she's like, nah. I got things to do.
I gotta go. I got a D appointment somewhere across the narrow sea. Like, I gotta go. Like, I'll see you later.
Yeah, he is lusting after her for sure. Yeah, I know.
It reminds me of like that desperate guy at the bar who, like, so badly, like, buys you drinks and tries to, like I mean, what am I talking about? I don't know anything about that at all.
Yeah, Jay knows about that too. I think Jay is that kind. Nah, not even. Jay has no patience.
I'm up and gone. I'm out of there. Fuck that. I'm not crying no more.
Yeah, it's like Jay at your wedding, Christine.
We need to talk about that actually.
Yeah, that'll be off screen, okay? When we're stop recording.
All right, so moving on. There you go.
Holy Nico.
Daenerys, we see her for the first time this episode. She tries to help. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
wait, before we move on to the next scene, I just want to say, like, I just want to point out that at the end, okay, all like jokes aside about Melisandre, like, ghosting Stannis, she does start planting the seed that about King's blood and how there needs to be sacrifice.
Fuck his blood. She said she's gonna fuck one of his.
No,
blood,
but
basically.
like that's also very important because that plays into all of his future scenes.
Yes.
But like she really plants the seed that like there's other ways.
She's dealing with magic type stuff right now. Like and she's trying to figure out ways to actually like you said, make that his dreams come to fruition of him being on the throne, and like you know what I mean, like, and she gets creative with it for sure. Like
but because she sees all that desperation in him, I feel like she's starting planting the seeds like no, there's other ways. Sacrifice.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So and then there's some other things I don't even think are covered in the next episode that coming up with him. There's a lot of things you learn about Stannis in this season, let's say that. So yeah, for sure there's some interesting things coming up. They've not even alluded to as of yet. So Daenerys, she tries to help someone who's sentenced to death on a cross, basically in the town with some water in this scene, and there
wasn't just one; there was a lot of them. She just
it was the walk of shame, or the walk of with the slaves.
And we already know how she feels about slavery and like, how that's a big thing for her. Like, and she's there with the Unsullied and she's trying to like get her army here in this situation, but she doesn't like obviously the fact that they have this, this slavery kind of in their town. Right. And she's mentioned this previously too, like, about like not being down with slavery. Like she said this, and which is weird because like, again, like, Jorah, we know that he was a slave trader, so the fact that she even has allowed him to help her as much as he has up to this point, I think is interesting because it kind of goes against like what it seems like is her like, you know what I mean, where she draws the line in terms of like one of the things she's really against, right? And that's the whole reason that Jorah basically is not allowed back. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
it's in but I mean, just go back to her own story. She was sold.
That's right.
Herself, like. Stockholm syndrome, like number one, but and look at what she did with that. So I think she's just taking the power back. Like she knows what it's like to be sold.
Yes.
And so she just doesn't like, she wants to change that.
Exactly. Yeah. And she's not basically, loving the way things are going and, basically like the spoils of war type stuff that, happens to follow with what they're trying to accomplish here. And Sir Barristan mentions how he knew Rhaegar Targaryen and how they went about, how they used to go about things. And Jorah says, but he fought valiantly, but he still died. And, these two are basically, seems like they're kind of fighting for like attention in this scene, sort of a little bit, like almost like kind of the, like, obviously we know how Jorah feels about Daenerys already, right? But it sees like these two are kind of both vying for her attention almost, I think, in this scene. Like he kind of is trying to let her know that he knew her family, and he's already kind of spoken about like his relationship with her family previous to this and why he's joining them. But he, as time goes on with these next couple episodes, his kind of, it seems like his loyalty, or at least his whether or not he believes in her, is still up in the air, like in terms of this whole like what she's doing, right? Like
we're talking about Jorah, right?
No, not Jorah. Barristan.
Barristan?
Sir Barristan.
Yeah. I think Barristan. Like because he was loyal to the Targaryens, right? Like so he's just trying to continue that because she is a Targaryen and she's obviously young, impressionable. She's trying to do things that obviously don't align with what he's seen or what he's, she's also a woman again. So, Sir JT.
Would it be Sir S-I-R or you like Sir?
No, I think it's that. Like
It's
what?
spelled like this, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I read the subtitles, so I know, bro.
I'm impressed.
I like that. There you go.
That's the only time I'll read. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's just like like two, like there's one commander, you know, of armies and greatness, and then you have somebody who's like in love with her and like trying to help her that way. But you know, they're both I think I don't know, they both have points. Like
Yeah, no, absolutely, and
Well, they're trying to brag too. I think like Sir Barrister is trying to brag that he never needed knights to fight, and because she's talking about buying knights, right?
she needs
Or
an
money
army.
there. Yeah,
Well,
sorry, the army, yeah, but they're all knights regardless. I mean, in a sense, if they're her army, right?
there's also like the comment about fighting beside the last dragon, which she, you know, doesn't like how like that's like what he says about that, right? And she kind of says like that wasn't the last dragon, like, you know, basically like again, she's always, you know, fighting, I think, for her respect, for people to take her seriously. You know what I mean? Like, and you know, and again, that's why it's hard to say whether or not Jorah believes in what she's doing or if he's just overtaken by her beauty and kind of is just going along with it, right? Because like there's moments where it seems like he, after witnessing what he has witnessed already with her walking through the fire and everything else, he's all in. But then like other times it's like he's really like, you know, these two start questioning a lot of her methods and like what, you know what I mean? Like, and how she goes about things, which he doesn't take too kindly to either, right? In a certain scene, right? It's coming up. So
Well, I mean, you think about it. If you think about it, I mean, like they said, women didn't have much say back then. It seems like they've been trying. It seemed like they were in this series. Of what I can say is, it seems like they're trying to step out. This is, if anything, might have been before its time for certain shows when it came to this, where the women had their like in the shows and the actual. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just because it's the older times. That maybe I'm talking about like the way they used to be back in the day. Let's say.
You know, you're going to see as the series go on.
But
like
I mean,
most of the people that are in positions of power in the show are women. Like in the long run in this show, it is.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I feel like they're setting that up now, slowly coming.
Yeah.
Right. Where you're starting to see it slowly because the men are just being dumb. You know,
But you also see it like
with their dicks.
You see it like in House of the Dragon too. Like, look at this. Like, who has claim to the throne, Rhaenyra or Aegon? Right? Like, who is it? And it's like, well, obviously it's Rhaenyra, like, because Viserys like says, no, it's Rhaenyra, but people still don't believe it, and she has to prove all the time, like, that she's worthy of the crown. It's just the time. But I get what Nico's saying, or what Neeks is saying, you know, about you know, the struggle between the two, and it's like, you know, who is really trying to support her for the right reasons and who is like, you know.
Yeah, it's hard to say at this point because like I think like up to this point we thought he was all in, but there's been a couple of instances where Jorah kind of was just like, you know, let's get out of here, let's ditch this whole plan. Like it seems like he just
maybe it's paranoia.
Maybe, and then again, you know,
well, if she fails, then he's fucked too, in a sense, right? If she doesn't fail, if she doesn't come through with what
he has nowhere else to turn. Like that's basically he's put all his. Yeah, he doesn't really have any other choice right now in terms of like if the people in the realm that he can. Yeah, he's been outcasted essentially. Like in you know,
for sure.
Yeah, so. Anyways, yeah, Daenerys meets with what's his name here, Master Krasnus, to discuss buying all the unsullied slaves in Astapor, which they find out is 8,000 plus the ones in training. And this is a great scene. He says, you know, they cannot sell untrained slaves as they could bring shame to Astapor. And he basically does some quick math and mentions the fact that she'll still end up owing him 7,877 unsullied after trading her ship and some Dothraki that she has with her. Like, you know, and
I was dying.
Again, he's, you know, calling
his
her
language
name in the book. Yeah. And the translators try to clean it up. Right. And try to like, you know what I mean? Like while he's like, you know, calling her a whore or whatever he's calling her. Right.
Stupid slut.
He said she could flash her tits. She thinks she could just flash her tits.
Yeah.
But good. It's in their own language. And that's why it's awesome. That's why I've been watching subtitles.
Hilarious. Yeah. And she then offers him a dragon because she has nothing else to offer.
Threw me off.
Yeah, and
But I
You know
knew there
what's
was
funny?
something going
I don't
on.
know
She's
how
a
this would have
conniving little bitch.
Rewatching it, I'm like, how stupid is this fucking guy? But okay, more on that in the video.
Oh, I
Yeah,
thought about that. Yeah, afterwards. It took me a second, but it clued in where I think she was going with it.
clearly didn't put any thought into this decision because as soon as someone puts a dragon for offer on the table, they're like, oh, a dragon, right? Like,
That's what I mean. The guys were stupid.
yeah. But no one's even seen dragons for forever though, Jake. So if someone flashed a dragon in front of you, yeah, you get excited for it. You're like, okay, yeah, I'll do anything to get the dragon, right? So he basically, that kind of goes
the worst kind of like politician ever. Like, and he just cares about the power and like, he's in power, so he doesn't care about anything. He's just like, I don't know. Yeah, give me a dragon. Sure, I'll just train more Unsullied, like whatever.
Yeah, but most of these men, that's what I mean. Most of these men in this, it's starting to seem like they're becoming stupider as the series goes on, and then I see the women getting smarter in a sense, or where they're playing they're playing the intricate chess game as where the guys aren't.
Well, that's what
they're just going off in the fucking.
Like you said, Christina said, like he was just like, oh, I can always get more slaves. Like you know what I mean? He's like, whatever, I can never get a dragon, right? And then he even goes back and forth where he's like, three. He asked for 3. She's like 1. He's like 2, 1. Like she stands her ground. He's like, all right, 1 dragon, all right,
the biggest one or whatever.
One.
She's like, done.
Yeah. And basically, this is when Barristan and Jorah get in her ear and says, like, Khaleesi, it was not a good deal. Like, he's like, you could always win with dragons. It's better than armies. Like, what are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? Like, dragons is what we have, right? And she's just like, don't ever question me in front of again, right? And she basically, like,
reminded me of that lecture your mom used to. Yeah, your mom used to like lecture you before you'd go out, like, don't you dare act up, like.
Right. in this moment, though, she also ends up taking the translator Missandei as a result of the deal, and because basically she says now that we've brokered this deal, I'm going to take her with me right now, and then she kind of joins her and she kind of has a chat with her and gets to know her. Yeah, go ahead, Jake.
What's the word unsullied mean? It's confusing me in my head. Does it mean like like untouched, like fucking?
Yeah, they're like pure.
They've been like, everything else has been removed, I think, from them, like in terms of like who they are. Like they have no identity or something. It seems like, right? Like they're just like they're just made for war. Like that's, I think everything else has been stripped down.
Yeah, exactly. They're just they're not.
They're like tainted. Fucking machines, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, that's so she takes the translator and she chats with her about the Unsullied and their ways, and she says, and then there's a great line here where she says, yes, all men must die, but we are not men, right? And they kind of like, they end this scene with her saying that, right? And she's making moves here. Like she's very confident right now in what's going down. Like she's got everybody, this deal's about to be brokered. She's got her army in her sights. Like this is, she's, and whether or not, the other guys, the men didn't disagree with her decision to do so. She knows what's going on. It seems right. So,
great scene.
Yeah, great scene. That was a really good one.
She uses your favorite word in there too, where you can't. That one that you have a hard time pronouncing was one of the other episodes. And then
Valor Morghulis.
Oh yes, Harris and
right? Is that what it really means? All men must die, or she just threw that in afterwards? That's what it's translated to.
That's what, in the show. That's in Valyrian. That's what it translates to.
Yeah, you'll see some of them exchange pleasantries like that as the time goes on. Like there's a scene coming up in one of the future episodes where you see Thoros kind of say that to somebody else, and like because like anybody, I think that's like, I don't know, is it everybody that follows this Lord of the Light shit that says that, or just like this is just like something that people say to each other, like, I guess.
No, I don't think it's what people say. I think it's like if you're from Old Valyria or you've practiced the ways of Old Valyria, I think it's like a statement that is said and it's understood. It's kind of like a secret language or like a secret statement.
But is there a difference between that and the High Valyria? Because you know how some people are like, they talk about High Valyria or whatever, like is difference between like old, that's like like in religions how there's like the old school and new school type shit. Is there a difference?
Well, Valyria was a place, right?
No, I know, but you know how sometimes they say High Valyrian? Is that just people of stature in Valyria?
I think so it's like not so much in English, but in other languages there's informal and formal language, right? So I mean, it just depends on who you're addressing and who you're speaking to will determine which nouns and pronouns and all of these different things that you'll use. So I think there's like
royalty type of thing, like high. Yeah. Okay.
And sometimes you'll use it for people like in like positions of power or just as a respect thing. So it's not, I don't think it's like anything, like it's a different language. It's the same language. It's just different enunciations of words.
I've heard them reference High Valyrian before, and then also like you just sometimes just see them speaking Valyrian, but then there's also some people that go out of their way to say like High Valyrian specifically, right? So that's why I don't know if that was like okay.
Yeah, I think it is more of a language known to like the upper class.
Right. Which again, you learn a lot about in House of the Dragon, which is like, you know, front and center, the whole Valyrian type stuff, right? In that show. Right?
Yeah. Cause I mean,
yeah, it's the time of that. Yeah. So, and we go from that scene to JT's favorite scene with Podrick, you know, checking out the woman there.
Yo, Tyrion's the man. Yo, I need a buddy like that. What the fuck?
But can you perform like him?
Tyrion chats with
I don't know, man. I mean, it's just speculations. The girls are very quiet about it, not descriptive. So we'll have to see.
They didn't take his money, Jay.
That's right.
They didn't take his money.
I love how that unfolds. That's the stuff.
Sorry, I'm skipping ahead.
No, it's okay. It's great. It's Tyrion chats with Lord Baelish here. He says, you know, like basically they mention how, you know, Podrick, you know, you owe Podrick your life and would unite him if you could. And he's like, yeah, but I'm the master of coins, so I don't have such power. And he basically says, you know, thanks for helping the redhead out, the misunderstanding of her being the one that he was with, because there's that whole thing of them thinking that she was Shay, like the woman that he's with, like they thought that he had to play it up to his sister to pretend that they were together, the woman that now works with Baelish, right?
Roz.
Yeah, Roz, that's her name. Thank you. And basically, like, you know, he mentions that fact of thanks for rescuing her out of that situation, because he kind of had to pretend like that was the woman he was with at one point, because his sister, he didn't want Shay killed, right? Who's now, I guess, the handmaiden to Sansa, right? Essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And he only fucked her once, though.
That's right. He does say that. Yeah.
Okay, twice.
Yes, that's right. That's right. He does say that, right? When he's being questioned about it by her. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
He then proceeds to hook Podrick up after kind of seeing that, you know, this is what he's interested in. And he says, like, have you ever been with a woman? He says no. And then there's like kind of a whole scene that unfolds in like the bordello or whatever, of all the women kind of coming out of like these, like, you know, like curtains, right? Essentially. And he hooks them up with not one, not two, but three women again.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. One of them who apparently is four in the world that knows the Myronese not.
Did you see the way she did that? I wrote, what the fuck kind of move was that?
I like how, like, we don't even know what sex move this is, though, the way she folds herself up. He's just like, oh, the Myronese knot. And like, oh.
Yeah, just the way he was going around, like, just telling a story about all these women. It was just so, like, oh my God. Like,
the way they shot that scene was,
it was perfect.
Yeah. They were like hit in, and then they came out like this guy can't get a hold of himself, right? Like, he's like, what the hell is going on, right? And him and Bronn are just having so much fun with it, because obviously, you know, this is a trade that they're very familiar with, let's say, and like they're just like kind of like, oh yeah, I remember my first time type thing, because it's funny, because he even made a comment about the one girl, the Jenna is her name, I think. He said, yeah, he's like,
bro,
oh yeah,
her name is actually called Pixie the Knot in real life.
That woman that they had in that scene, really? They have her listed? Yeah, Pixie the No, so
I don't know why. Yeah, I just looked at the picture. Yeah, dude.
It's the first girl that he brings her to, Jenna. He's like, oh, she's very good with first timers, and like Bronn's like, yeah, she's pretty good with second timers.
Yeah. That was her. I think this was her crawling up to show off. No,
listen, the oldest profession.
Great photo. Great photo.
The oldest profession in the world, folks. There you go. You gotta give it respect. So that's the oldest. Tyrion. So there's that scene. He kind of leaves them with them, and Tyrion. Then we cut over to him. He's like looking over the finance, sitting there with Bronn, and says the crown, you know, owes his father millions, which is a pretty crazy like development, like a reveal here, kind of, that he mentions. He's like, yeah, I don't know what Baelish has been doing here, but he's like, we can't afford to pay this back. Baelish just keeps borrowing money. And that's why he's like, everyone thinks that he's like a wizard, the way he kind of like just gets this money out of nowhere whenever they need money. But it looks like he's been basically borrowing from his father, but then now they owe the banks, and it's like a whole situation, which is like, it kind of talks about the downfall of the economy, essentially, right? Like how we go through like these periods, even, you know, in real life, right? So like it's interesting, like, and if you're looking at what's going on right now with the states, that's kind of actually very similar to life too. It's the same thing. Like they owe all kinds of money. Though, you know, there's these people that are in positions of power that are just in huge amounts of debt, and they've been allowed to kind of get by this whole time. But, you know, he's talking about the interest rate is going to kill them essentially, right? So he's really getting into some financial talk here, but he mentions the fact that like the crown is not in a good position right now, like in terms of like their finances.
No, because one way, or you know, then he mentioned. Well, he talks about like
the Iron Bank.
He talks about the Iron Bank, but also like, you know, Lannisters, they always pay their debts. You know, so he's a Lannister himself, and so he's trying to school Bronn on the basics of borrowing.
Yes.
Because Bronn's like, well, what if I don't pay you back? And he's like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
You don't pay me back? You have to pay me back.
They'll make it very difficult for you. They said they'll be paying out to your enemies if you don't do that.
Yeah.
One way or another. So I thought it's very true to life the way he was describing this kind of stuff, and obviously that's what they took inspiration from. But it's interesting to hear it from their perspective in this world and in this show, like how they, even back then, they were kind of going about this kind of stuff. And he basically says that the Iron Bank of Brothers, they owe them tens of millions of dollars at this point, so they owe them.
They just keep borrowing and borrowing,
And this is where the scene, this is a great scene that Christina just previously mentioned about Podrick returning and giving back his little coin purse they left for him, like his money. And he's like, I told you to pay them. He's like, you don't, he's like, this is way more than I pay. He's like, you don't pay him. And he's like, okay, well, there you go. Like, what are you doing returning this to me? This was a gift. And this is when they find out he didn't drop any money on the three women. The women did not make.
They wouldn't take it.
Yeah, right.
Have you ever heard of a whore not to take money? Or gold or whatever.
Where Tyrion's like, are you serious? And like he pulls up a chair and pours some wine. He's like, you're gonna have to give us details. He's like, how did you accomplish this?
Yeah.
I was trying to figure that out too. I don't know, man. I was like,
they enjoyed their time.
I mean, hopefully
maybe it was his virginal innocence.
I mean, the fact that they referenced that he was there for a while with them is even surprising to me, because if the fact that he's with three women, you would think it'd be like 2 seconds and then you'd be out of there. But like, I don't know. It's funny because they're the mystery that surrounds this now moving forward, kind of, you know, like
it goes with him. It stays with him.
Great. Oh, I love it.
He brings the name with him.
Yeah, he's like, do you hear that? He enjoyed their time so much with them that they didn't charge him. Like, Bronn can't even believe it. He's like, that's what he's trying to say. And like, Tyrion's like, no fucking way. He's like, what? Oh yeah, it's a great scene. And then we see Theon being chased by other men on horseback, shooting arrows at him. Theon gets hit off the horse. The wind's knocked out of him, only to get captured and almost ass raped in the woods, which is pretty scary with that turn of events that happened there. And then
I wasn't expecting that.
Look at Jay's face. He's like, that was scary.
Yeah,
it was very scary.
Had a nice little ass though, eh? No.
And then that was his ass double, Jay. I don't know if you knew that. A little fun fact that I see on IMDb.
Ass Lynott.
Yeah. He was just about to. That dude was about to give him the Mayonnaise knot in the woods, and and the few men, they get an arrow shot at them and killed by his savior from earlier, the guy that took the bag off his head, right? Which again, who's not been identified as of yet, as they tend to do in this show. I don't think they've actually said who this man is, what his name is. It's a big mystery for the first little bit. So yeah, you'll have to keep guessing, Jay. I know you're dying to figure out who this guy is.
But before the helper, that's just how I have him in my notes, shoots that last guy, he says, "You little bastard." It's like, so it's kind of pay attention to that.
Yes, yeah. Actually, that I didn't catch that. So yeah, good on you. I didn't catch.
Which guy that shot who? What in that scene?
So when the helper comes and is like saving Theon from all those men that were chasing him down with the arrows and the mace and all of that, before the helper kills the last guy, because he close range shoots him in the face with an arrow, the guy basically says, like, sees who the person is and says, "You little bastard," and then the helper like shoots him in the face.
Okay, I'll have to remember that.
with an arrow, not a gun. That's what I did.
This is
An arrow.
this is one of the more interesting stories going forward, Jay. So yeah, definitely pay attention to what's happening in these scenes with this whole situation. And
Okay.
and yeah, finally, the final scene of the show here, guys. Hence Christina's name here. This is a crazy scene. Now, Jay, I want to hear your reaction to this one when we get to the finale here of this
I have
episode.
what the fuck parts written down. Like I always
Right?
put what the fuck so I can remember how. Like I write WTF.
I knew it was coming up, but it still kind of shocked me even upon rewatching it this time around because it's the only second time I saw it, right? But Brienne tries to explain herself to her captors, but instead, ends up getting beat up by a bunch of men in this situation. And Jamie mentions who her father is and that they have access to sapphires, to which her father would gladly pay forth if she was basically unbesmirched. He's obviously saying, if they don't rape her and everything else, like that they have planned for her, because all he can hear is her kind of struggling in the background as he's kind of sitting there with the other dude. And he basically says, promises it. And then he goes on to say, like, he promises them gold from his father as well. And basically talks his way out of being tied up to the tree in this moment and gets her, like, they stop messing around with her because after the guy says that, oh yeah, about the sapphires, and he's like, okay, yeah, we'll make sure she's unbesmirched. She's like, oh yeah, what a fancy way of saying it, right? And he's kind of like, it seems like they're warming up to Jamie because he's got like a silver tongue or some sort, right? Because Jamie is
charming.
He's worked his way out of these situations before.
Kingslayer,
he's seen him on this journey before, right? So like, oh yeah, okay, Sir Jamie, yeah, we'll untie you. We'll take you off the tree and everything else, and
come have a pigeon.
That's right. And then
pigeon.
Which again, they're getting very friendly very quickly with them all of a sudden, and you kind of, you think something's up even with the way they're kind of acting, but Jamie's just kind of going along with it, right? And but then he gets a knife to his face, and they're kind of going on about how, daddy's little boy, how you always get out of these situations by doing this kind of shit, and they're like, talking him up, and they're threatening him, and basically, yeah, you can always yell for your daddy, and Jamie gets his hand cut off. Yep, Jamie gets his hand cut right off at the end of this scene, and it kind of just ends with him
Who's
yelling.
this guy anyways? What's his name? Did they even say it?
No, I didn't get it from this episode. I mean,
all right,
he definitely has a name, but like I don't.
Yeah, Noah or something like that, or Nicholas.
That's the actor. That's Jamie's. Yeah. Oh, Noah Taylor. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. He couldn't get his father's money, did not help him out of this one. Essentially, the kind of guy references the fact that that's his solution to everything, which it is we've seen the Lannisters do, Tyrion, him, everybody just throws money at these situations, and I guess this guy wasn't having it, and he's like, this isn't, us capturing you isn't going to change, and takes his hand essentially at the end of this episode, and the episode ends with Jamie just like yelling out, obviously in pain,
I couldn't believe it, man.
Right? Yeah. So. So you were surprised at this, Jay? Did you expect that to happen? Or
well, yeah, I didn't expect him to cut his hand off. I might have expected him to give him a scar or something like that. Or, I mean, I don't know who these guys are too that got them, right? In that sense, but yeah, it was just weird to see that. And after he kind of was being nice and kind of got, was kind of saved Brienne, but then yeah, she admits that he knew that there's no sapphires there, and why did she lie? Or like, why did he lie?
Yeah, that's in the next
episode. Sorry. It's all right, man.
That's okay.
It's bleeding in right now.
But it's one of those things where, again, he helps her out in a situation, and that is talked about in the next episode, the 4th episode, which we'll have Christina back on for, guys. So make sure to tune in next week for that episode as well. We have been continuing to put these out weekly for you guys with these pre-recorded episodes Thursdays every week at 8 p.m. We try to put it out there for you guys, and as long as we can keep working ahead of time and putting these out on time for you guys, we're going to try our best in doing so. But Christina, any final thoughts on this scene or this episode before we wrap her up? Anything else you wanted to say about this?
No, I'm just like I said earlier, it's a great story moving forward like episode. So I'm really excited for the next episode, because one of my favorite scenes in the whole series is in it. So
wow, okay, I'm interested to hear that. We'll have to see what that one is. So yeah, so as I mentioned, guys, stay tuned, come back next week. Make sure you subscribe, all that good stuff. Hit the like button, let us know what you thought. And yeah, Christina, thank you for joining us for this episode and the next one as well. And it'll be a lot of fun to talk about that with you. And yeah, thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time and watching The Throne. Get that music.
On the throne.